Hello everyone, welcome to Book Club Preview. I'm Michael, and today we're looking at The Story of More, Chapter 4, Where We Are. Now, the chapter starts off with asking, if you look back in your family history, how many generations do you have to go back before you find a farmer in your family, or your family being farmers? For our author, it's just, I think, two generations. Not her parents, but her grandparents were farmers. She gives a little history here about her grandma and grandpa, and it's a little confusing, I think. But she tries to make this kind of joke about like these contracts. But her grandfather moved to the town where her grandmother was there. The grandfather probably didn't have any money. So instead of maybe showing that he had money to earn the chance to marry his wife, the grandfather worked for a certain period of time, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, I don't know, worked for the grandma's father. And then once the grandfather worked that time, the grandmother's father said, okay, you can marry my daughter. And so the author says the grandfather traded a fixed period of labor, okay, of like farm labor, for a indefinite, undetermined period of domestic labor, house labor, for my mom, for my grandma. Okay, so she's kind of making a joke. The grandpa worked like 3 years for 60 years of housework from this mom or this grandma. Okay, so I kind of making a joke, I guess. It, to me, it really sounds really unfortunate and poor. Hopefully, there was love mixed in there, but she doesn't mention that. It's all about contracts. But she goes into talking about city life, okay? Because that's the point. That nowadays, if you look, 100 years, 200 years, you can find farmers. But nowadays, if you look at your family, who in your family is a farmer? Not very many people. In fact, most of us live in cities. Half of the world's population lives in cities. And she goes through and she kind of looks at how people started going to cities, why people started going to cities, and I won't really break down each of those points, but access to higher wages, access to electricity, access to sanitation, access to culture. Let's see here, access to more labor. There's a bunch of different things she goes through, and she kind of shares stories, and she kind of talks about megacities, and there's like 40 megacities in the world, and those are cities with 10 million people or more, right? Tokyo, New York, probably Beijing, Seoul, uh, Moscow, I guess, London, okay? These cities that have huge amounts of people in them, mega cities, and now people are flooding there. And half the world's population lives in cities. She kind of concludes with this idea. She actually kind of maps out this idea of if you turned off the lights or if you saw a picture of the Earth from outer space at nighttime, you can see it almost looks like a brain. If you see like an electric scan of your brain of all of the electricity going through, the Earth kind of looks like that, with a city being some thought, and then sparks of lightning are coming off into different avenues, like our brain. She says there's so much more in cities, but cities cost so much more. More food, more time, more energy, more resources. And as more people are moving to the cities, we have less people to create that food for the people in the cities, which she's going to talk about in the next chapter. That's pretty much the kind of main idea or main points of the chapter. Let's look at some vocabulary. Hanker is a longing. When you're in Rome, you long, you hanker for the countryside. Oh, I wish I can go out to the countryside. But when you go to the countryside, there's no place like Rome. You want to go back to Rome. So hanker, long for, desire. Now these next ones, I actually had to look up. And I don't even know how to pronounce this. I'm going to guess here. Bucolic. Bucolic has to deal with, what was it here? I looked this someone up. Okay, let me go to number 2 or number 3 here. Okay, agronomic is farming, labor, like working the dirt. And so bucolic, I'm guessing meant, man, I can't remember. Let me check. There we go. Bucolic means relating to the countryside. Sorry about that. Man, I've never seen bucolic used before or caught it. Agronomic, I could guess, because agroculture, right? Something like that. So the grandmother's father was living in a bucolic environment, right? Living in the countryside with farms. And the grandfather that married the grandmother, that grandfather traded agronomic labor, right? Farm labor, work labor, for marrying the grandma. Hamlet is like a small village, town. It could even just be village. Here's another tough one here. Dendrites. Now, remember I was talking about the city, and we can use an example here with our pen. If you think about a brain cell, okay, she uses this analogy a lot, and she even talks about like a nucleus. That's the center of a cell, and she says these dendrites are coming off. Dendrites are like these thick channels from the cell, okay, that have power or blood or electricity, whatever. And then the next one she talks about, axons, those are the smaller channels that come off, that are snaking out. They're thin, I mean, they could even be longer, honestly, but they're not as thick. So if you think about a city, right, at nighttime, the lights, boom, is a concentration. But then you have roads and freeways, and there's lights all around the freeways that then come to suburbs, different little towns, snaking off in all the directions. So dendrite is the thick one, and the axon is the smaller one going through. And that's all just to kind of paint a picture of what cities look like at night and what the brain looks like. I'd recommend looking at some pictures. If you don't have a chance, when we get together, we can just look at some. I think it's so crazy that our cities actually look like a brain. The same mapping of. Here's another thing that I think is crazy. If you look at the universe and you pull out and you look at all the suns and the universe and things, that also looks like a brain. The way that our brain works. It's just, I love looking at those pictures. They're beautiful and crazy. But those are some vocabulary words. Discussion question here for you real fast. What do you think is better, living in a city or living in a countryside? That's such a common question, but as we're talking about it, let's weigh the advantages and disadvantages of each of them. Please remember to make your own discussion question. That is all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Book Club Preview. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.